The morning sun cast long shadows across Pine Valley Shooting Range as 8-year-old Emma Martinez carefully carried a stack of fresh paper targets toward the 100-yard line. Her small hands gripped the targets tightly, making sure not to drop any as she walked the familiar path she'd taken every weekend for the past 2 years. Emma's father, Carlos Martinez, owned the shooting range that had been in their family for 3 generations. What started as a simple facility for local hunters had evolved into one of the most respected training grounds in the state, attracting everyone from weekend hobbyists to professional law enforcement officers. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you. Make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Careful with those targets, Mia Carlos called out from the range office, his voice carrying across the open field. Remember to stay behind the safety line until everyone's finished shooting. Emma nodded, her ponytail bouncing as she acknowledged her father's reminder. She'd heard these safety instructions countless times, but Carlos never tired of repeating them. Safety was everything at Pine Valley Range. The early morning crowd was just beginning to arrive. Emma recognized most of the regular faces retired. Police officers maintaining their qualifications, competitive shooters preparing for tournaments, and hunting enthusiasts sighting in their rifles before the season. But today, there was a new group she hadn't seen before. 6 men in their 30s, all carrying themselves with a particular kind of confidence Emma had learned to recognize. They moved differently than the regular customers, with an alertness and precision that marked them as military. Their gear was top tier, their weapons meticulously maintained, and their interaction with each other spoke of years working as a tight unit. Staff Sergeant Mike Hawk Morrison led the group, his weathered face scanning the range with professional interest. Beside him walked Petty Officer First Class Jake Steele Rodriguez, whose steady hands and patient demeanor had made him the team's designated marksman. The other 4 operators, Tommy Dash Williams, Rick Bull Thompson, Sam Ghost Patterson, and Alex Razor Chen, completed a SEAL team on leave from their last deployment. Nice setup, Jake observed, examining the range's layout. Clean sight lines, proper backstops, good safety protocols. This place is run right. Emma watched the newcomers from behind the safety line, fascinated by their professional equipment. She'd seen many shooters come through the range, but something about these men was different. They handled their weapons with a casual familiarity that spoke of extensive training and real-world experience. "Range is cold," Carlos announced over the loudspeaker system. "All shooters, weapons safe, step back from the firing line. Target maintenance in progress." Emma waited for the all-clear signal before walking downrange to replace the used targets. This was her favorite part of helping at the range, seeing the different shooting patterns, noting which shooters were improving, and which ones might need some gentle coaching from her father. As she worked, pulling down torn paper targets and clipping up fresh ones, she became aware that the new group was watching her with interest. Not in an uncomfortable way, but with the kind of professional curiosity that came from understanding the importance of range safety and proper procedures. "That's the range owner's daughter," Carlos had explained to Mike when they'd checked in. Earlier, Emma's been around firearms her whole life, knows more about safety than some adults who've been shooting for years. Jake watched Emma work with growing respect. The 8-year-old moved with purpose and confidence, checking each target. Hold her carefully, ensuring everything was properly secured. She wasn't just going through the motions. She understood what she was doing and why it mattered. "She's got good awareness," Tommy commented quietly to his teammates. "Keeps checking back toward the firing line, making sure everyone's still behind the safety barrier." Emma finished replacing the targets at the 50-yard line and moved toward the 100-yard stations, where the SEAL team had been shooting. Their targets told an impressive story, tight groupings that spoke of exceptional skill and consistent training. "Wow," she whispered to herself, examining their shot patterns. Even at her young age, Emma had seen enough targets to recognize exceptional marksmanship when she saw it. "Pretty good shooting, huh?" Emma turned to find Jake approaching, his rifle case slung over his shoulder. Up close, she could see the calm confidence in his eyes, the kind that came from years of training and experience. "Yes, sir," Emma replied, politely. "These are some of the best groups I've seen on the 100-yard line." Jake smiled at her mature response. "You know much about shooting." "I've been around the range my whole life," Emma explained, continuing her work. "Dad says I've got a good eye for reading targets. I can usually tell which shooters are having trouble with their stance or their breathing just by looking at their groupings." "Is that so?" Jake's interest was genuine now. "What can you tell about our shooting?" Emma studied the targets more carefully, her young mind processing the patterns with surprising sophistication. "Well, your group shoots really tight together. That means you practice a lot and you're all really good. But ... double quotes." She paused, studying one particular target. "But what?" Jake encouraged. "This target here has shots that are all low and to the left. Whoever shot this might be jerking the trigger just a little bit, or maybe their sight needs adjusting." Jake looked at the target Emma had indicated. It was his. He'd been wondering about that slight inconsistency in his shooting, but an 8-year-old had spotted it immediately. "That's actually really insightful," he admitted. "How did you learn to read targets like that?" Emma shrugged, embarrassed by the attention. "Dad teaches me stuff. He says understanding what the targets tell you is just as important as knowing how to shoot safely." Mike had approached during their conversation, listening with growing amazement. Carlos wasn't kidding when he said his daughter knows her stuff. Range is hot. Carlos's voice boomed across the facility. All personnel behind the firing line. Live fire exercise commencing. Emma quickly finished securing the last target and jogged back toward the safety area. As she passed the SEAL team's position, she heard them discussing their shooting plans. "For the morning, standard qualification course first," Mike was saying. "Then we'll work on some stress shooting drills." Emma paused, her curiosity getting the better of her. "Excuse me, sir, but what's a stress shooting drill?" The team exchanged glances, amused by the young girl's direct question, but impressed by her genuine interest. "Well," Jake explained, kneeling down to Emma's eye level, "it's when you practice shooting while your heart rate is elevated, or when you're tired, or under pressure. In real situations, you don't always get to shoot from a perfect stance with pre-mass, with unlimited time. Like when Dad has to shoot at wild boars that are charging toward the cattle." Emma asked. "Exactly like that," Tommy said with a grin. "Your dad's had to do that." "A few times," Emma nodded seriously. "He says the most important thing is to stay calm and remember your training, even when everything's happening fast." The SEAL team was beginning to understand that this wasn't just any 8-year-old. Emma had grown up in an environment where firearms were tools, where safety was paramount, and where practical application was as important as theoretical knowledge. "That's very good advice," Sam said approvingly. "Your father sounds like a wise man." As the morning progressed, Emma continued her duties around the range. But she found herself repeatedly drawn to watch the SEAL team's training. Their discipline was remarkable, every movement deliberate, every safety protocol followed precisely, every shot taken with purpose. During a break in their shooting, Jake noticed Emma observing from the designated spectator area. She wasn't just watching casually, she was studying their techniques, their stance adjustments, their breathing patterns between shots. "Hey Emma," Jake called out during a ceasefire, "want to come take a closer look at what we're doing?" Emma looked toward her father, who nodded his permission. She approached the firing line cautiously, maintaining proper safety awareness even in her excitement. "This is my rifle," Jake explained, showing her the precision instrument. "It's designed for accuracy at long distances." very different from the hunting rifles most people use here. Emma examined the rifle with the respectful attention it deserved. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "All the parts look like they work together perfectly." "They do," Jake confirmed. "But the most important part isn't the rifle itself." "What's the most important part?" Emma asked. Jake tapped his temple. "The shooter's mind. All the expensive equipment in the world won't help you if you can't stay calm. Focus on your fundamentals and make good decisions under pressure." Emma nodded thoughtfully. This lesson resonated with everything her father had taught her about firearms and life in general. As the SEAL team prepared to resume their training, Jake made an impulsive decision. Something about Emma's genuine interest, her mature understanding of safety, and her obvious natural aptitude made him want to share something special with her. "Emma," he said, holding out his rifle. "Want to hold this for a second, just to see how it feels?" Emma's eyes widened with surprise and excitement. "Really? Are you sure? As long as your dad says it's okay," Jake replied, looking toward Carlos. Carlos approached, having overheard the conversation. He could see the respect and careful consideration in Jake's offer, and he knew his daughter well enough to trust her maturity and safety awareness. "What do you think, Mia?" Carlos asked. "Think you can handle the responsibility?" Emma nodded solemnly, understanding that this was a significant moment. As Jake carefully handed her the rifle, ensuring it was completely safe and unloaded, neither of them realized they were about to discover something that would change everything. The weight of the precision rifle in Emma's small hands felt different from anything she'd ever held before. As she brought it to her shoulder, her natural stance and instinctive positioning caught the attention of every SEAL team member present. "Well," Jake said, quietly, watching Emma's perfect form, "this just got interesting." What happened next would be talked about at Pine Valley Shooting Range for years to come. As Emma settled into her stance with Jake's precision rifle, something extraordinary became apparent to everyone watching. Her small frame seemed to naturally align with the weapon, her breathing automatically falling into the controlled rhythm that took most shooters years to master. That's perfect form," Tommy whispered to his teammates, his voice filled with disbelief. "Look at her natural point of aim." Jake moved beside Emma, his role shifting from joking observer to serious instructor in an instant. "Emma, I want you to look through the scope and tell me what you see." Emma closed her left eye and peered through the high-powered optic, her right eye focusing downrange. "I can see the target really clearly. There's a small circle in the middle, and crosshairs that line up with it." "Good," Jake said softly. "Now, this rifle isn't loaded, but I want you to pretend it is. Show me what you would do if you were going to take a shot." Emma's response was instinctive and flawless. She adjusted her grip slightly, settled her cheek against the stock, and controlled her breathing exactly as her father had taught her with their training rifles. But this was different, more natural, more intuitive. "Holy Mother of Pearl," Sam breathed, watching Emma's textbook positioning. "She's 8 years old, and she's got better fundamentals than half the recruits I've trained." Carlos approached cautiously, recognizing something significant was happening. He'd seen his daughter handle firearms before, but never with this level of apparent natural ability. The precision rifle seemed to fit her like it had been custom-built for her small frame. "Dad," Emma said quietly, still maintaining her perfect shooting position, "this feels really different from our rifles at home. It's like ... like it knows where I want to shoot." Jake exchanged meaningful glances with his teammates. In their years of military service, they'd encountered maybe 2 or 3 individuals with genuine natural shooting ability, the kind that couldn't be taught, only refined through practice. "Emma," Jake said carefully, "I'm going to do something, and I want you to tell me if it feels right or wrong, okay?" Emma nodded, still focused downrange. Jake reached over and made a minor adjustment to the rifle's position, shifting it slightly. Off Emma's natural point of aim, immediately, Emma's discomfort was evident. "That doesn't feel right," she said without hesitation. "It's like the rifle is fighting me now." Jake moved the weapon back to Emma's original position. "How about now?" "Perfect," Emma replied instantly. "It's like the rifle wants to point exactly where I'm looking." The SEAL team was witnessing something they'd only heard about in training circles. A shooter with true natural instinct. Emma wasn't just following learned techniques, she was demonstrating an intuitive understanding of marksmanship that typically took years to develop. "Carlos," Mike said quietly, "I think your daughter might have a very special gift." Before Carlos could respond, Emma lowered the rifle and turned to face the group. "Can I ask you something? Why does this rifle feel so different from the ones Dad lets me practice with?" Jake knelt down to Emma's eye level, his expression serious. "Emma, what I'm about to tell you is very important. Some people are born with natural abilities. Some people are great at music, some at math, some at sports. You appear to have a natural ability for precision shooting." Emma looked confused. "But I've never shot anything like this before." "That's exactly what makes it so remarkable," Tommy explained. "Your body knew exactly what to do without anyone teaching you. That's not normal. That's extraordinary." Carlos felt a mixture of pride and concern. He'd always known Emma was bright and responsible, but this level of natural ability came with implications he wasn't sure he was ready to consider. "What does that mean?" Emma asked, her young mind trying to process the adult's serious tones. "It means," Jake said thoughtfully, "that with proper training and guidance, you could become one of the best marksmen in the country. Maybe one of the best ever." Rick, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "But first, let's see if this was just beginner's luck. Emma, would you like to try actually shooting?" "With your dad's permission, of course." Emma looked eagerly at her father, who was wrestling with a decision that could change his daughter's life forever. He'd seen enough exceptional shooters to recognize what his teammates were seeing, but Emma was still just 8 years old. Carla said carefully, "This is a very powerful rifle. Much different from the .22 we practice with at home. Are you sure you're ready for something this serious?" Emma nodded solemnly. "I understand it's serious, Dad. I'll follow all the safety rules, just like you taught me." After a long moment, Carlos gave his consent. "One shot," he said firmly. "We'll see what happens, and then we'll talk about what it means." Jake began preparing his rifle for live fire. But first, he needed to make sure Emma understood the gravity of what she was about to attempt. This wasn't a toy or a training exercise. This was a precision instrument capable of hitting targets at distances most people couldn't even see clearly. "Emma, this rifle fires a much larger, more powerful cartridge than anything you've used before. The sound will be much louder, even with hearing protection. The recoil, that's the kick you feel when you shoot, will be stronger too." Emma listened intently as Jake explained the differences, asking thoughtful questions that demonstrated her understanding. As he loaded a single round into the chamber, the entire range seemed to hold its breath. "Remember," Carlos added, "everything we've practiced about breathing, sight alignment, and trigger control. But most importantly, if anything doesn't feel right, you stop immediately." Emma nodded and assumed her shooting position once again. As she settled behind the rifle, that same natural alignment returned immediately. It was as if the weapon was an extension of her own body. "Target is at 100 yards, Jake announced. "Emma, take your time. There's no rush. Focus on your breathing and let the shot happen naturally." Through the scope, Emma could see the target with crystal clarity. The crosshairs seemed to naturally settle exactly where she wanted them, with minimal movement or adjustment needed. She'd never experienced anything like the stability and precision this rifle offered. Her breathing fell into the rhythmic pattern. Her father had taught her in-out natural pause, gentle squeeze of the trigger. But something was different this time. The sight picture seemed almost magnetically drawn to the exact center of the target. "Whenever you're ready," Jake said softly. "Remember, smooth trigger, press straight back." Emma's world narrowed to the simple equation of crosshairs, target, and breath control. In that moment, the 8-year-old girl disappeared, replaced by someone with an intuitive understanding of precision that defied explanation. The rifle cracked with authority, the sound echoing across the range. Emma absorbed the recoil perfectly, her small frame managing the powerful cartridge with surprising ease. As the sound faded, everyone's attention turned downrange to see the result. "I'll get the spotting scope," Carlos said. But Jake was already looking through his own high-powered optics. What? Jake saw through his scope made him lower the instrument and stare at Emma in complete amazement. That's not possible." "What happened?" Emma asked anxiously. "Did I miss?" Tommy had grabbed another spotting scope and was now examining the target himself. His reaction was even more dramatic. "Holy cow! Carlos, you need to see this." Carlos looked through the spotting scope, and his expression shifted from parental concern to absolute astonishment. At 100 yards, Emma's single shot had struck the target dead center, not just in the scoring rings, but in the exact geometric center of the bullseye. "Emma," Carlos said, his voice filled with wonder, "that's a perfect bullseye." "Dead center." Emma brightened with excitement. "Really? I did good." "Sweetheart," Jake said, shaking his head in disbelief. "I've been shooting professionally for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone, adult or child, make that shot on their first attempt with an unfamiliar rifle." The SEAL team gathered around, each taking turns confirming what they were seeing through the spotting scopes. The shot wasn't just accurate, it was impossibly precise for someone with no experience on that weapon system. "This changes things," Mike said quietly to Carlos. "Your daughter doesn't just have natural ability, she has world-class potential." But Emma's achievement had attracted attention from others at the range. Word was spreading quickly among the other shooters, and a small crowd was beginning to gather. Some were skeptical, others curious, all wanting to see the 8-year-old who had supposedly made an impossible shot. "I think we should call it a day," Carlos said, suddenly aware of the attention his daughter was receiving. "This is a lot to process," but Emma was energized by her success, not overwhelmed by it. "Can I try again, please? I want to see if that was just lucky." Jake looked to Carlos, understanding the father's protective instincts while recognizing the rare opportunity they were witnessing. "Maybe one more shot, just to confirm what we're seeing." Against his better judgment, Carlos agreed. "One more. But then we talk about what this means for you, Mia." This time, Jake decided to increase the challenge. Instead of the standard bullseye target, he set up a smaller precision target with multiple scoring rings. If Emma's first shot was luck, this would reveal it. "This target is smaller," Jake explained. "The center ring is only about 2 inches across at 100 yards. That's a very difficult shot, even for experienced marksmen." Emma studied the new target through the scope, noting its smaller size and more complex design. But her confidence hadn't wavered. If anything, she seemed more focused than before. "I can see it clearly," she reported. "The center ring looks like it's exactly where the crosshairs want to go." This time, Emma's preparation was even more methodical. She adjusted her position slightly, found her natural point of aim, and settled into her breathing rhythm. The crowd of observers had grown larger, but she seemed completely unaware of their presence. "Take your time," Jake reminded her. "Let the shot surprise you." Emma's second shot broke with the same authority as the first. This time, however, There was no need for spotting scopes, even with the naked eye. Observers could see that she had once again struck the exact center of the target. Unbelievable, breathed an older shooter who had been watching from nearby. I've been competing for 30 years, and I've never seen shooting like that. Jake examined the target through his scope and found Emma's second shot had struck within millimeters of the center ring. 2 shots, 2 perfect hits, with a rifle she'd never used before. "Emma," Jake said seriously, "what you just did is extraordinary. Most people practice for years and never shoot that accurately." But Emma's response surprised everyone. Instead of excitement or pride, she looked thoughtful and slightly concerned. "Is it weird that it feels so easy?" she asked. "Like I can see exactly where the bullet is going to go before I even shoot." This statement sent chills through the SEAL team. True natural marksmen often described a kind of intuitive awareness of their shots. But hearing an 8-year-old articulate it so clearly was unprecedented. "Emma," Sam said carefully, "when you're looking through the scope, what exactly do you see?" Emma considered the question seriously. "It's like there's a line from the rifle to exactly where I want to hit. And when everything feels right, my breathing, the way I'm holding the rifle, everything that line gets really bright and clear." The experienced shooters exchanged knowing looks. Emma was describing what competitive marksmen called the zone, a state of perfect focus where the shot becomes inevitable rather than hoped for. "Dad," Emma said, turning to Carlos, "why is everyone looking at me like that? Did I do something wrong?" Carlos knelt beside his daughter, choosing his words carefully. "You didn't do anything wrong, Mia. You did something very special." These gentlemen are amazed because what you just did is incredibly difficult, even for people who have been shooting their whole lives. "But it didn't feel difficult," Emma protested. "It felt natural." "That's exactly what makes it so special," Jake explained. For most people, precision shooting is a skill that has to be learned through years of practice. For you, it seems to be something you were born knowing how to do. The implications of Emma's demonstrated ability were beginning to sink in for everyone present. This wasn't just a talented child. This was someone with the potential to redefine what was possible in precision shooting. "What happens now?" Carlos asked, voicing the question that was on everyone's mind. Mike stepped forward, his expression serious but encouraging. "With your permission, Carlos, I'd like to make some phone calls. There are people who need to know about Emma's ability. Coaches, training facilities, organizations that specialize in developing exceptional talent." "I don't know," Carlos said hesitantly. "She's still just 8 years old. Atona want her childhood to be consumed by shooting competitions and pressure to perform." Emma looked up at her father with wisdom beyond her years. "Dad, remember what you always tell me about gifts? That when God gives you something special, you have a responsibility to use it to help others." Carlos smiled despite his concerns. His daughter's maturity continued to amaze him. "That's true, Mia, but using a gift responsibly doesn't mean you have to give up being a kid." Jake had been thinking about the same issue. "Carlos, what if we approach this differently? Instead of immediately throwing Emma into competitive shooting, what if we focused on developing her skills at her own pace? No pressure, no competitions until she's older and decides that's what she wants. Like a mentorship program." Tommy suggested, "Help her learn the technical aspects while keeping it fun and educational." Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. "Could I learn about different kinds of shooting? Maybe how to help other people get better too." The idea was appealing to Carlos. Rather than being pushed into premature competition, Emma could develop her abilities while maintaining a normal childhood. "I'd be willing to work with her," Jake offered. "Teach her about different shooting disciplines. Help her understand the science behind marksmanship. Introduce her to the mental aspects of precision shooting. And I could help with the technical side," Rick added. "Ballistics, equipment selection. understanding how different factors affect accuracy. Emma looked eagerly at her father, hoping he would agree to this arrangement. The opportunity to learn from such experienced instructors was beyond anything she could have imagined. "What do you think, Mia?" Carlos asked. "Would you like to learn more about shooting, as long as it stays fun and doesn't interfere with school or your other activities?" "Yes, please," Emma exclaimed. "I want to learn everything about how this works." And so began an extraordinary journey that would reshape not only Emma's life, but the entire understanding of what was possible in precision shooting. Over the following months, Jake and his teammates became regular visitors to Pine Valley Range, working with Emma to develop her remarkable, natural abilities. The training was unlike anything the SEAL team had ever conducted. Instead of breaking down bad habits formed over years of shooting, they were working with someone whose instincts were already perfect. Their role became less about teaching fundamentals and more about helping Emma understand the science behind her natural ability. "Today we're going to talk about wind," Jake explained during one of their sessions. "Even though you instinctively adjust for it, understanding why will make you even better." Emma absorbed every lesson with the enthusiasm of someone discovering their true calling. She learned about ballistics, atmospheric conditions, different shooting positions, and the mental discipline required for consistent performance. But perhaps most importantly, she learned about the responsibility that came with her gift. Jake and his teammates emphasized that exceptional ability should be used to help others, not just for personal achievement. Real marksmen don't just hit their targets, Jake taught her. They help other people hit theirs too. Emma took this lesson to heart, beginning to help other young shooters at the range. Her ability to see what others were doing wrong and explain corrections in simple terms made her an surprisingly effective teacher. 6 months after that first extraordinary shot, Emma's reputation had spread throughout the shooting community. But rather than being pushed into premature competition, she continued to develop at her own pace, guided by mentors who understood that nurturing talent was more important than exploiting it. "You know what amazes me most about Emma?" Jake said to Carlos during one of their training sessions. "It's not her shooting ability, though. That's incredible. It's her maturity. She understands that being gifted means being responsible." Carlos watched his daughter helping a new shooter adjust his stance, her patience and encouragement evident in every interaction. "She gets that from her mother," he said with pride. "The shooting ability, though, that's something else entirely." The sun set over Pine Valley Range that day. Emma was cleaning Jake's rifle with the same careful attention she brought to everything else. The 8-year-old girl who had started the day simply replacing targets had discovered something extraordinary about herself. But more than that, she had learned that true excellence wasn't just about personal achievement, it was about using your gifts to lift others up. And in the months and years that followed, Emma Martinez would do exactly that, revolutionizing not just precision shooting, but the way exceptional talent could be nurtured and shared. The story of the little girl who could shoot like a Navy SEAL became legend in shooting circles. But for those who knew Emma personally, the real story was about something much more important: the discovery that greatness isn't just about what you can do, but what you choose to do with what you've been given. Years later, when Emma had become one of the most respected marksmanship instructors in the country, she would still remember that first day at Pine Valley Range, not because of the perfect shots she made, but because of the moment she learned that true strength comes not from what you can hit, but from what you choose to teach others to aim for. And Jake kept that first target Emma ever shot, framed in his office as a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary gifts come in the most unexpected packages. The 8-year-old girl who had simply been replacing targets had ended up hitting the most important bullseye of all: the discovery of her true purpose. The story spread far beyond Pine Valley Range, inspiring other young shooters and changing how the shooting community thought about developing exceptional talent. But at its heart, it remained a simple tale about a little girl, a patient teacher, and the moment when natural ability met the wisdom to use it well. Emma Martinez had indeed been just replacing targets that day. But in the end, she had become the target herself, the example that others would aim to follow, proving that true marksmanship isn't just about hitting the center of the bullseye, but about helping others find their center too.